6 a.m. on a Monday morning changed everything for me. I stepped outside to begin the biggest workday of my 30 years farming, and there was Karen, my HOA neighbor, standing beside a brand new Bentley, parked dead center across both barn doors like a $200,000 barricade. The smug look on her face made my blood boil. This wasn't an accident. It wasn't a slip-up. It was deliberate, and she'd been plotting it for months. But Karen didn't know what she'd triggered. When you trap a desperate farmer with everything on the line, the cost of getting out rises fast. Drop a comment if someone ever pushed you so far you snap back. Monday, 6 a.m. I walked out to start the busiest day of the year and found a silver Bentley Continental placed with surgical precision across both barn doors. I've been on this land for 3 decades and seen strange things, but this was intentional. This was calculated. There she was, Karen Sullivan, posing beside her flashy new ride like she owned the county. Dressed in designer workout gear worth more than most folks earn in a month, phone forever in hand. You know the type, someone who treats HOA president like a permit to boss everyone around. But Karen was different this morning. Usually she was all clipboards and violation notices, buzzing about like an angry wasp hunting someone to sting. Today she seemed calm, patient, and oddly satisfied, as if she were savoring something only she could taste. Rebecca Stone was already out walking her dog, phone up like she was filming something for her neighborhood feed. Rebecca had been documenting safety issues ever since her husband died in that farm accident 5 years ago. Still watching for hazards, she called out. The way she said it made my skin crawl like she was waiting for something bad to happen. Morning, Tom, Karen called, that predatory smile spreading. Beautiful day for deadlines. The emphasis on deadlines set every alarm inside me blazing. In the 2 years since her son Danny died, Karen had funneled her grief into becoming the most vindictive HOA president this county had seen. She launched her campaign against farmers after that tragedy. But this morning felt different. Personal. I circled the Bentley searching for any gap, any way to move my equipment. Nothing. Both barn doors were sealed and aligned exactly on the property line like she'd measured it with a surveyor's tape. Karen, you're blocking my barn, I said, forcing my voice steady. Are you kidding me? She had the audacity to park her luxury car across my livelihood like it was some chess move. Am I? She glanced at the Bentley as if she hadn't noticed, clutching what looked like a business card in trembling fingers. Wait, was she actually shaking? Sorry, I'm still getting used to parking something this substantial. Just picked it up yesterday. The line felt practiced, like she'd rehearsed it in front of a mirror. Old Pete from down the road was leaving for his morning coffee and waved. Hey Tom, harvest season protocols are kicking in soon. County reminders, you know. Karen's head snapped toward Pete so fast I thought she'd get whiplash. The way she zeroed in on protocols told me this wasn't small talk. Just normal farm work, Pete. I called back, watching Karen's reaction. Her smile returned, but now it had an edge that chilled me. Normal, she echoed slowly. How predictable. Then my phone buzzed with a text that made my stomach drop. Delivery confirmation at 12 p.m. today. Payment on completion as agreed. I shoved the phone back in my pocket and stared through the dusty barn window at a row of boxes I'd been meaning to sort for months. Old stock, odd valves, labels curling from the heat. A 12, a 15, and the one I never wanted to think about, a 17. Not proof of anything, just a sequence. Just a box that survived 3 cleanups because I couldn't bear to open it. 30 years farming teaches you the shape of responsibility. It has a weight that settles in your ribs like a bruise you stopped naming. Outside, the pasture breathed cold mist across the fence. The cattle watched with a patient, unblinking stare they reserve for storms. I told myself this was just another weather front. Endure the wind. Keep the line taut. Fix what breaks. But there was a different electricity under my skin. It didn't feel like weather. It felt like reckoning. I looked up and found Karen watching me like a scientist studying lab rats. She knew. Somehow this woman knew my delivery schedule, my timeline, and exactly when to park her expensive roadblock for maximum harm. Every detail was perfect. Times I'd never mentioned. Patterns I thought only I knew. She'd been watching, learning my routines like she was running an operation. Karen loved showing off how clever she was. She wanted me to know this wasn't random, that she'd done her homework. But what unsettled me most was that, for someone staging perfect revenge, she seemed agitated rather than pleased. Her knuckles were white on that business card. Instead of the predator's calm I expected, she looked almost scared. "Karen, how do you know my schedule?" I asked, though I didn't really want the answer. She gestured to my John Deere through the barn window, then switched to that razor-sharp tone she used in HOA meetings. "Tom, I've been HOA president for 2 years since Danny died. It's my job to know what's going on in our community. Those machines have a lot of power. Accidents can happen." A notification chimed on her phone, probably another piece of whatever plan she'd stitched together. But instead of triumph, panic flickered across her face. This wasn't unfolding how she'd expected, and that fright bothered me more than her confidence had. "Tom," she said quietly, pulling out a second phone I'd never seen before. The screen glowed with something that made my stomach sink. "I think we need to talk about timing." She held up the phone, and I caught a quick look at the screen. Security footage. Multiple angles. Live. Jesus. How long had she been watching me? She was recording everything. Right now, this conversation included. My skin crawled as the scale of it hit me. She pulled out her main phone and started scrolling a detailed schedule. Her hand steadied. She was back in control, and that terrified me more than her earlier panic. 6 a.m. Barn access, equipment prep by 7. Hey, loading at 8 on the dot. She looked up with that predatory smile that had become her trademark. "Sound about right, Tom." Every detail was uncanny. Times I'd never shared. Routines I followed without thinking. How did she know when I prepped? How did she know my loading timeline? I felt like a bug under a microscope, exposed and vulnerable. Karen loved proving how thoroughly she'd research her target. She wanted me to see this wasn't spontaneous. It was months of planning. "Karen, how do you know my schedule?" I tried again, voice weaker than I meant. She gripped the business card tighter. Her knuckles were white. "Tom, I've been HOA president 2 years since Danny died. It's my job to understand what happens here." She nodded toward my John Deere through the window. "Those machines have so much power. Accidents are waiting to happen." Rebecca moved closer, phone still recording for whatever safety documentation project she'd kept up since her husband's death. I began noting safety hazards after her voice caught, forcing her to pause before going on. After my husband's accident 5 years ago, I understood just how dangerous farm machinery can be when handled carelessly. The way she phrased it made me wonder if her talks with Karen had gone far beyond neighborhood watch concerns. A shadow passed across Karen's face, grief tangled with fury she could barely contain. "It's about accountability, Tom. Ensuring risky operations don't endanger lives." She squeezed the business card tighter, and for a second grief flickered in her eyes. Some of us know the consequences better than others. For someone orchestrating what looked like a flawless trap, Karen no longer resembled a hunter. She looked like someone barely keeping it together. Her polished control was fracturing, revealing something raw and desperate that pressed on my chest. But sympathy wasn't an option, not when my livelihood was hanging by a thread. Her phone buzzed again. Instead of triumph, panic crossed her features. Whatever schedule she'd mapped out, it wasn't holding. "Tom," she said, voice trembling now, "what happens if you miss your delivery deadlines?" The words hit like a punch. She knew about my contracts, my cutoffs, exactly where to strike to cause the most financial harm with the least effort. But what rattled me most was her expression. She looked terrified of her own question, like she dreaded the answer, even though she'd engineered this entire showdown. Then, instead of another alert, I heard the growl of a truck engine. My delivery crew arrived early for preload inspection. The driver stepped out, clipboard ready, completely unaware of the storm breaking around us. "Tom, just verifying route and load size for this afternoon. Looks like we're cutting it close with that 1:45 deadline." Karen caught every word, but instead of savoring her win, sheer terror flashed in her eyes. The business card slipped from her grip, and fluttered to the ground. Clear as day. Marcus Williams, agricultural engineer, his number dialed repeatedly. "Tell me, Tom," she whispered, barely audible, "what happens if you can't make that delivery?" She wasn't asking to gloat anymore. She was asking because she was scared of what she'd unleashed. This wasn't clean revenge. It was a chain reaction she could no longer stop. The perfect setup was collapsing, and so was her composure. Her careful prep, her exact timing, her surveillance, all crumbling because she hadn't braced for the reality of watching someone's livelihood unravel in front of her. "That's none of your concern, Karen," I said. But we both knew she'd already pieced it together. She'd dug through my contracts, my finances, my lapsed insurance. She knew exactly what one missed delivery meant for a 30-year family legacy. The card lay between us like evidence neither of us wanted to claim. Marcus Williams, tied to her son, someone she'd been avoiding, reasons I was starting to piece together. That's when Deputy Miller's cruiser rolled into my drive. Karen's face told me this was part of her play, but what I saw in the back seat froze my blood. Someone sat there holding a thick manila folder with my name stamped across it. Miller climbed out, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. I'd known Jake Miller as our local cop for over a decade, but I'd never seen him this uneasy. The passenger stepped out, a woman in a business suit clutching that folder. Lawyer? County assessor? Whoever she was, Karen had called him back up. "What's happening here?" Miller asked, though his tone hinted he already knew. Karen launched into her act about safety and proper procedure, waving at my barn and equipment like she was arguing in court. Her voice had regained its edge, but the panic was still there behind her eyes. "Jake, I cut in. I've got a delivery due by 1:45. This car's been blocking my barn over an hour." I gestured to the Bentley parked with military precision. The suited woman leaned to whisper something to Miller. His face hardened instantly. Whatever was in that folder, it wasn't good for me. Miller scanned the Bentley, then turned back with a question that dropped my stomach. "Tom, I need to see your equipment insurance and operating permits." He adjusted his body cam. Under harvest season protocols, when access points are obstructed, I'm required to verify coverage before anything moves. Not a trap, just a checklist that keeps funerals off my calendar. He glanced at the barn the way you test a door for fire before opening it. 10 harvests ago, he muttered. I waved the guy through on a verbal. Insurance was due to renew. We cut him out of a bore before noon. The planner stopped writing. The driver froze. Everyone heard the warning under his words. Miller wasn't crossing that line again. Work with me, Tom. If the rulebook ties my hands, I'll own it. But at least we'll all walk away breathing. His tone was iron now. This wasn't routine. Someone had asked for this specifically. I shuffled through my papers, dreading what he'd find. My insurance had lapsed 3 months ago, delayed by cash flow issues. Karen's eyes gleamed, victory laced with fear, as Miller examined the expired policy. She'd known. Somehow she'd mapped my insurance gap and set her trap with precision. The woman opened the folder, aerial photos, property surveys, pages of records. A slow, deliberate case built against me. My phone buzzed again. The buyer, Tom, it's 10 o'clock. Need confirmation for 1:45 delivery. Every ping made Karen flinch, as if each reminder struck her personally. Miller checked his watch, then gave me a look that carried both duty and pity. Tom, I can't allow uninsured equipment to operate, especially with formal complaints on file. The folder was thick with alleged violations. I pulled out the foreclosure notice I'd been hiding like a death warrant. Jake, 1:45 the bank takes everything. This load is my only chance. My voice cracked. Karen's mask slipped. For an instant, I saw not the calculated HOA president, but a broken woman horrified at what she'd set in motion. She stepped forward, trying to regain control. Public safety, surely, outweighed a single man's financial troubles. At least that's what she said, though her voice wavered as she spoke. Her gaze drifted to the business card at her feet, and she looked at it like it might answer questions she was too scared to ask. The woman from the county planning office carried on with her file. Mr. Harris, you've been operating heavy machinery on agricultural land without required safety inspections, current insurance, or up-to-date permits. The complaints indicate a pattern of negligent conduct that endangers the community. Each sentence hammered another nail into my coffin, and I could see Karen's fingerprints on every documented violation. This is insane, I snapped, scanning the faces gathered around me. I farmed this land 30 years, no accidents. My father farmed it before me. This is a vendetta, not a safety review. Even as I argued, the legal gears ground onward with relentless force. The delivery driver shifted in his cab. Tom, I don't mean to rush you, but I've got 3 more stops. If we can't load by noon, I'll have to hit my backup supplier. $8,000 walking away along with my farm, my family's legacy, everything I'd built. The woman from planning opened another section of the folder. Mr. Harris, there's also the matter of defective equipment you sold 2 years ago. Equipment involved in a fatal accident. The words landed like a blow, and the picture started to assemble itself. Karen's fixation on my farm, her knowledge of my operations, her precisely timed retaliation. Karen, I said softly as realization settled in. What did I do to make you hate me this much? Her mask dropped. When she spoke, her voice was thick with 2 years' worth of poison. You get to keep running those death machines while my Danny is in the ground because of farmers like you. Then, in a whisper that made my blood run cold, she added, but you're not just any farmer, Tom. You're the farmer. Those words, that emphasis, froze me. There was a specific, personal connection here I'd never seen coming. Have you ever done something that later caused someone far more pain than you imagined? Share it in the comments. Sometimes the smallest acts leave the deepest scars. Silence slammed down after Karen's line. Miller, Rebecca, still filming, the planning woman, even the driver. Everyone held their breath like waiting for the other shoe to fall. The morning felt heavy with secrets clawing their way out. Danny Sullivan, Karen said, her tone shifting from bile to a blade of grief that cut straight through me. 18 years old, agricultural engineering major, died because some careless farmer couldn't operate his equipment properly. The way she looked at me made clear she didn't mean an abstract, careless farmer. She meant me. The blow felt physical. Karen, I'm sorry for your loss, but I don't. I began. She cut me off with a laugh that wasn't a laugh at all, a sound full of venom. Sorry, she spat. You're about to be so much more than sorry. You farmers think you can keep killing people and walk away. Today you lose everything just like I did. This wasn't grieving anymore. This was cold, calculated retribution brewed for 2 years. She'd weaponized her tragedy and aimed it at innocent people. And then she showed me a photo that knocked the legs out from under me. Danny in a cap and gown beside a John Deere, clutching drawings. It wasn't just any tractor in the picture. It was the same model I'd sold parts for 2 years prior. Danny wanted to make things safer, Karen said, voice hard as glass. He died trying to save someone from equipment that shouldn't have been used. Now she leveled her accusation directly. And every single one of you will pay, starting with you, Tom Harris. Rebecca lowered her phone, disgust clear on her face. Margaret, using your son's death to hurt innocent people, Danny would be ashamed. Karen's eyes flashed hotter than ever. Don't you dare tell me what my son would feel. You have no idea what it's like to watch your child die because someone else was too cheap or reckless to maintain their equipment. The pieces were falling into place, and I didn't like the picture. 2 years ago, I'd sold a batch of used tractor parts to younger farmers trying to keep going on a shoestring. Good business, moving stagnant inventory, helping new farmers start up. But apparently one part failed, and Danny Sullivan paid with his life. Miller stepped forward, voice calm but firm. Ma'am, I can't imagine what you've gone through, and losing a child is devastating. But destroying someone's livelihood won't bring him back. His compassion landed on Karen like gasoline. Won't it stop another family from going through this? She screamed. Won't it make people think twice before cutting corners and selling dodgy parts to kids who trust them? The accusation struck hard because there was a ring of truth to it. I'd sold parts as is, assuming a competent mechanic would check them before installation. The planner cleared her throat and opened another folder page. Mr. Harris, records show you sold a hydraulic safety valve to Daniel Sullivan on March 15th, 2 years ago. The valve failed in a tractor rollover on March 20th, resulting in Mr. Sullivan's death. She handed me a copy of the receipt, my handwriting staring back like indictment. My hands trembled as memories flooded in. I remember him, I whispered. Karen's face shifted from rage to a grim satisfaction. He was trying to help a neighbor retrofit safety equipment, said it was a college project. The admission felt like admitting to a crime, though I'd never had reason to think it would end this way. His senior project, Karen confirmed, and for the first time since this nightmare began, real tears appeared. Danny designed systems to prevent rollovers. He was going to save lives, Tom. Instead, he died because you sold him a faulty part you probably suspected was dodgy. That accusation stung. It had enough truth to cut. I hadn't known for certain the valve was defective, but I hadn't verified it either. It was old stock sold at a discount to a kid who seemed capable, the kind of deal that happens every day in farming towns. Karen, I swear I didn't know. My plea was cut short by her colder reply. Of course you didn't, because you didn't care to find out. You saw a young man with cash and sold him whatever junk was on a shelf. She stepped closer, her perfume mixed with a raw edge of desperation. Do you know what Danny's last words to his friend Pete were? She asked, and my world began to tilt. Pete, the same old Pete who'd walked by that morning, had been mentioned earlier, and now the memories started to snap into place. Harvest protocols. Pete, the same one who'd been oddly friendly with me for 2 years, always asking about my machines and procedures, was the last person Danny spoke to. Danny had told him the hydraulic valve felt loose, not quite right, but when Pete's tractor began rolling, there wasn't time to hesitate. Danny tried installing the prototype system anyway, hoping it would save Pete's life. Karen's voice cracked on those words, and for the first time, I glimpsed real grief beneath the calculated vengeance. The final puzzle piece locked into place. Pete's tractor was tipping. Danny's safety system worked, and Pete survived. But the defective valve I sold failed under stress, and Danny was crushed. Miller glanced between us, his face tightening with realization. Mrs. Sullivan, is this why you moved here? To live near Mr. Harris? She nodded, wiping at her tears. I researched everything. His farm, finances, insurance. I wanted him to feel as powerless as Danny did. The truck driver checked his watch, tension in his voice. Tom, it's 11 o'clock. If you're not loaded by noon, I have to go to my backup supplier. $8,000, my survival, vanishing while Karen's revenge played out in my driveway. I looked from Karen's tear-streaked face to Miller, who couldn't let me operate uninsured equipment, and then to the Bentley blocking my only lifeline. The choice was brutal but simple. Let Karen's obsession erase my legacy, or fight back against her 2 years of plotting. Tom, Miller said firmly, I can't let you run uninsured. That's when Rebecca raised her phone. Actually, I think everyone should hear this. Karen's face drained of color, stumbling back like she'd been struck. Rebecca, you didn't know. I recorded everything, Margaret. Rebecca cut her off, including when you admitted you knew who Tom was before moving here. She held the phone like evidence in court. Karen's face went from white to sickly green, genuine fear flickering for the first time. But instead of backing down, her mask shattered into fury. You sneaky little bitch. Karen spat, all pretense of grief gone. You think you're clever with your pathetic blog and amateur sleuthing? The woman standing there wasn't a grieving mother. She was someone who had engineered psychological warfare for 2 years and wasn't about to lose. Rebecca stayed steady. Public easement, public conversation. You've been loud enough for everyone to hear. And yes, my app's been recording for over an hour. Completely legal. So what? Karen shot back, her voice cracking. Everything I said is true. He killed my son and should lose everything. Rebecca hit play. Karen's voice spilled out, clear and damning. I've been planning this for months, timed it with his delivery deadline. His insurance expired yesterday. I researched everything. This will ruin him financially. Every farmer, like him, deserves it for what they did to my Danny. The recording kept going, colder still. The best part? He'll lose everything on Danny's death anniversary. Perfect revenge. These farmers think they're untouchable. Time to prove them wrong. Miller's jaw dropped. This wasn't justice. It was malice sharpened into a weapon. The planner scribbled frantic notes, realizing her safety case might rest on fraud. Mrs. Sullivan, Miller said carefully, based on this recording, you're under investigation for false reports and harassment intended to cause financial harm. He keyed his radio, clipped and professional. Dispatch, Unit 5, body cam active. Documented obstruction, corroborated audio of premeditation. Requesting immediate removal order under harvest interference protocols. Static, then his supervisor's reply. Miller repeated the order word for word, his tone like a gavel. Granted. Liability on obstructing party. Removal to prioritize human safety and economic necessity. Karen slumped against her Bentley, still defiant. So what if I planned it? He killed my son. He sold Danny that valve. Everything else is details. Rebecca wasn't finished. She played another clip, this one from earlier. Karen's voice hissed through the speaker. That idiot doesn't even remember selling Danny the valve. Farmers like him sell so much junk, they can't keep track of who they kill. But I remember every receipt, every way this man destroyed my family. The worst part wasn't the words. It was the satisfaction in her voice, like she relished watching me fall. Miller returned from his call. Mrs. Sullivan, my supervisor confirmed. Based on this evidence of harassment, fraud, and premeditation, I have authority to order your vehicle removed immediately. The planning officer shut her folder with a sharp snap. And if your complaints were filed in bad faith, Mr. Harris could sue for damages. We'll be reviewing every claim to separate legitimate safety issues from personal vendetta. Karen's trap was collapsing, but she dug in, arms crossed. I don't care what authority you think you have. This man killed my son. I'm not moving. Miller photographed the blocked barn, the car, her stance. Mrs. Sullivan, 2 minutes to move your vehicle, or it's towed at your expense. Just then my phone buzzed. The Hey Buyer's voice was hard with finality. Tom, it's 11:15. If you can't confirm delivery by 1:45, I'm calling my backup. Final call. Chaos swirled. Karen defiant at her Bentley. Miller documenting evidence. Rebecca still recording every word. Harvest protocols. The same Pete who'd been unusually friendly the past 2 years, always checking in about my gear and safety habits, had been the last person Danny spoke to. He'd told Pete the hydraulic valve felt loose, not quite right. There wasn't time to wait. When Pete's tractor began to roll, Danny rushed to fit the prototype anyway, hoping it would save him. Karen's voice broke on that line. And for the first time, I saw real grief under all the planning and fury. Then the rest snapped into place. Pete's tractor rolled. The safety rig did its job, and Pete survived, but the valve I'd sold failed under strain, and Danny was crushed. Miller's face tightened as he put the pieces together. Mrs. Sullivan, is this why you moved here, to be near Mr. Harris? She nodded, dabbing at her cheeks. I dug into everything. His farm, his finances, his schedule, his insurance. I wanted him to feel as helpless as Danny did. The driver checked his watch. Tom, it's 11 o'clock. If you're not loaded by noon, I have to go to my backup. I can't wait. $8,000, my only lifeline, slipping away while Karen staged her revenge in my driveway. I looked at her tear-streaked face, at Miller who couldn't legally let me run uninsured equipment, and at the Bentley still blocking my only path out. The choice was brutal. Let Karen's vendetta wipe out my family's legacy, or fight back against 2 years of calculated persecution. Tom, Miller said, I can't let you operate uninsured. Rebecca raised her phone. Everyone should hear this, she said. Karen blanched and took a step back. Rebecca, you didn't, she was cut off. Oh, I recorded everything, Margaret. You said you knew who Tom was before you moved here. Rebecca held the phone up like evidence. Karen went from pale to green. For the first time, she looked afraid of losing control. Instead of surrendering, she snapped. You sneaky little, her mask collapsed. The woman who stood there wasn't only grieving. She was a planner of psychological warfare who'd spent 2 years crafting a setup. Rebecca stayed steady. Public easement, public speech. I recorded legally. Play it. Rebecca hit play. Karen's voice rang out clear. I've been planning this for months, timed it with his delivery. His insurance just expired. I dug up everything. This will bankrupt him. Then colder. He'll lose it on Danny's death anniversary. Perfect revenge. These farmers think they're untouchable. Miller stared, mouth open. This wasn't grief, it was malice. The planner scribbled notes as the case she'd prepared suddenly looked shaky. Mrs. Sullivan, Miller said, careful now. That recording opens an investigation for false reports and intentional harassment to cause financial harm. He keyed his radio. Dispatch, Unit 5, body cam active. Documented obstruction and corroborated audio of premeditation. Requesting immediate removal under harvest interference protocols. Static, then the supervisor. Order granted. Liability on the obstructing party. Removal to prioritize safety and commercial necessity. Karen slumped against the Bentley, but didn't relent. So what if I planned it? He killed my son. Rebecca played another clip. Karen bragging about receipts and saying farmers sold so much junk they didn't know who they'd killed. The satisfaction in her voice made a lot of faces harden. Miller returned with the supervisor's word. Mrs. Sullivan, I can order your vehicle removed. If complaints are bad faith, Mr. Harris may have civil claims. We'll sort legitimate safety concerns from vendetta. Karen planted herself, arms crossed. I don't care. He killed my son. I'm not moving. Miller photographed the scene. 2 minutes to move your car, or it's towed at your expense. My phone buzzed. The buyer. It's 11:15. Can you confirm by 1:45, or I'm calling my backup? Final call. Chaos swirled. Karen defiant on her car. Miller documenting. Rebecca filming. I told the buyer, give me 20 minutes. He agreed reluctantly. Karen laughed, but it was raw and unhinged now, not the smug sound from earlier. You think his fix is Danny? Do you think a recording undoes what he did to my boy? She spat. Ma'am, Miller said, move your vehicle now. Under county harassment and agricultural interference statutes, I'm ordering you to clear the access. The planner was already on calls. Refusal meant tow and extra charges. Karen glanced at Miller, at Rebecca, and me beside my tractor. For the first time, she looked less sure. What if I refuse? She asked. The defiance rattled. I pointed to my John Deere and met her with 30 years of weather-beaten certainty. Karen, you spent months trying to destroy my family on the anniversary of your son's death. You dug through my records, tracked my routines, timed this to ruin me. You're not a victim. You're a predator. Her face flickered, shame or something like it. Then rage and raw desperation returned. She climbed onto her Bentley's hood like it was a pulpit. Come on then, violent farmer. Show everyone what you are. As I engaged the hydraulics and the bucket moved toward the car, she screamed for the crowd to witness me wreck her. She wanted me to crush her so she could be a martyr, smear me as a monster, a fail-safe victory. At that moment, Marcus Williams pulled in with a manila folder, but Karen ignored him, lost in the performance she'd rehearsed for 2 years. She didn't care about the car. She wanted footage of me attacking a grieving mother. I wouldn't give her that. I eased the John Deere forward, hydraulics slow and deliberate. You want to be a victim? Let me help you. The bucket inched toward the Bentley. Karen's triumph was immediate. She beamed, certain she'd proven her point. Rebecca's camera captured it all. Then her smile faltered. I didn't stop. The script she imagined unraveled as she realized I wasn't playing along. I lowered the bucket in a controlled arc and pressed forward until the car shifted. Panels crumpled, the windshield spidered, and the Bentley slid off the doors. No one was hurt. The bay was clear. Karen tumbled off at the last second, stunned as $200,000 of luxury twisted into scrap. My Bentley, she shrieked. You psychotic farmer. That was brand new. That was your tool of financial terrorism, I said, climbing down to inspect the ruined hood. The smashed luxury car lay like a brutal sculpture of outrage and consequence. For the first time, Karen looked horrified rather than calculating. The predator had become the prey, and for once, justice tasted like relief. Miller documented everything, relieved no one was hurt. Rebecca kept recording, probably already planning the post. The planner made calls, preparing to unwind the fraudulent complaints. Ma'am, Miller told Karen as she stared at the wreckage, You'll arrange towing for the debris, and you need to come down to the station to answer harassment charges." She barely registered Miller's instructions. She was still reeling from the collapse of the scheme she'd spent 2 years perfecting. 11:52 a.m. Barn doors clear. The Bentley was flattened beyond recognition. In 30 years of farming, I'd never seen anything more satisfying. The crumpled metal and shattered glass marked the end of Karen's campaign of psychological warfare and the rescue of everything my family had built. Loading the hay took me exactly 53 minutes of methodical work, the kind of machine-like efficiency you get from decades in the fields, plus the fierce urgency of a man fighting to keep his livelihood. Every bale that went on that truck felt like another nail in the coffin of Karen's failed plot. 12:45 p.m. Last bale loaded. 1:37 p.m. Delivery completed, payment received, farm saved. The buyer praised the quality and punctuality, completely unaware his $8,000 had just preserved 3 generations of a family farm from a grieving woman's vendetta. When I returned home, Karen sat beside the pancaked remains of her Bentley, finally reading the designs Marcus had left behind. For the first time that morning, she looked human. The calculating predator had slipped away, replaced by something I'd never seen in her before. Real remorse and the dawning horror of what she'd become. The wrecked luxury car looked like the world's most expensive lesson about turning grief into hatred. Justice served cold with a side of twisted German engineering. As she read, something in Karen softened. I wondered, not without a strange pity, whether smashing her car had cracked the cage she'd built from her own pain. "Tom," she said, voice far removed from the venom she'd used all morning, "did you know Danny's prototype saved a farmer in that accident?" Tears shone as she looked up. "And did you know the farmer was Pete, your neighbor?" Nothing exotic. The genius was in the redundancies. Failures degrade safely instead of catastrophically. He clipped the module to my tractor fender with a satisfying snap. "You don't sell safety. You rehearse it till it's boring." He looked out to the fence line. "We've been piloting these with 3 co-ops off the books. 1 near Abilene, 2 in Kansas. 0 serious incidents in 6 months where kits are installed and training repeats monthly." Karen traced a fingertip over the schematic legend, mumbling her son's notes. "He wrote this like instructions for caution," she said. Marcus nodded. "That's engineering at its best." "Mrs. Sullivan," Marcus added softly, opening the folder like it contained relics. "I've carried this around for 2 years hoping to find you. Danny's full portfolio. Not just hardware, but business plans, manufacturing leads, rollout strategies, everything he wanted to build." He spread pages carefully. "Danny talked about you all the time. He planned to surprise you after graduation. He had licensing talks, foundation plans to retrofit small farmers, and partners lined up." Over the next hour, sitting in my driveway while Marcus explained the scope of Danny's vision, I learned he wasn't tinkering for a grade. He'd imagined changing how America farms, making equipment safer so families like mine could work without constant risk. Karen looked from the ruined Bentley to my barn doors to the future in Marcus's hands. "This is the retrofit Danny designed. Would it have stopped his accident?" she asked, voice small, almost childlike, nothing like the vengeful HOA president from that morning. "Probably," Marcus said, pulling out correspondence with major manufacturers. "We've been in talks with John Deere, Case, and New Holland. They're interested in licensing Danny's package as standard or as a retrofit." The irony was crushing. While Karen had spent 2 years trying to destroy farm equipment through harassment and legal pressure, her son's work was aimed at making that same machinery safer for everyone. Marcus spread patent drafts, cost analyses, and rollout timelines. Danny's calculations showed his systems could prevent up to 80% of equipment fatalities. This wasn't a hobby. It was a scalable safety solution. Multi-million-dollar potential, Mrs. Sullivan. Danny's work could be industry standard within 5 years. Marcus's voice carried the gravity of possibilities, waiting 2 years for a chance. Karen stared at the wreckage, then at my barn, then at her son's future laid out on paper. The cruel symmetry of it all hit me hard. The woman who had tried to ruin farmers might, if she let go of rage, have the power to keep them alive. She never lived to see what he had created. The mangled frame of her luxury car looked pitiful compared to the legacy of safety and innovation Danny left behind. "Tom, what if Danny's accident was always trying to tell us something?" she whispered. For the first time since this nightmare began, her tone carried the weight of a grieving mother rather than a predator. What if instead of twisting his death into a weapon, we use his life to help people? Marcus's licensing figures had been staggering. Tens of millions that could fund safety research, provide affordable retrofits for struggling farmers, and give real structure to the dream Danny had outlined. Money that could turn mourning into hope, pain into progress, and vengeance into renewal. And yet, even as Karen seemed to rediscover her humanity, there was a flicker in her eyes, a signal that our story wasn't finished. That hidden truths still lurked, and choices from that morning still carried weight. "Tom," she said with a steady intensity that made my chest tighten, "what if we use that licensing money to make sure no other family endures what we nearly lost today?" She paused, her next words chilling me. "But first, there's something else Danny left behind. Something Marcus hasn't told us. Something that will change everything you think you know about that accident. About why you feel so guilty." A year later, the phone rang with news that reshaped everything once again. "Mr. Harris? This is Jennifer at Texas Agricultural University. The Danny Sullivan Safety Foundation has just received its largest donation yet." The licensing contracts had shattered expectations. John Deere alone had committed $12 million for Danny's rollover system, with Case International and New Holland contributing another $8 million combined for different components. The boy who had died chasing safer farming was revolutionizing the industry from the grave. His mother's grief had nearly destroyed a single farm, but his work was shielding thousands from that same tragedy. Karen phoned me right after the university's announcement. "Tom, I want to do something meaningful with this money. A loan program for family farms on the edge of foreclosure. Farms like yours," was that morning. Her voice no longer dripped with venom, nor with the cold calculation of those 2 years she waged psychological war. The Danny Sullivan Agricultural Safety Foundation launched with 3 pillars: safety retrofits for aging machinery, emergency loans for struggling farms, and a rigorous safety training initiative that would have made Danny proud. Karen even sold the scraps of her ruined Bentley for startup capital, traded luxury for a modest Honda, and poured every cent of her insurance settlement into research. 2 years after that brutal Monday morning, I stood in my own fields watching young farmers operate safer equipment through the Danny Sullivan training program. Karen worked beside me, remade from destroyer into a steward of her son's vision. Rebecca documented every step for her blog, now a nationally recognized agricultural safety resource. Backed by the foundation, the retrofit program had already reached over 300 farms, preventing an estimated 47 accidents in its first 18 months. Each machine bore a small plate, protected by Danny Sullivan safety systems. "Any regrets about that morning?" Karen asked as we watched a young farmer install proximity sensors on his grandfather's worn tractor. I looked over fields thriving under foundation support, at equipment safeguarded by Danny's blueprints, and at Karen, who had finally chosen to honor her son by protecting other children instead of breaking their parents. Just one, I admitted, that we couldn't find a way to talk instead of fight, that it took nearly losing everything to see what mattered. Even as I said it, I knew some truths only come through loss, some wisdom only through pain. Karen laughed, genuine laughter, the first since her son's death. She pointed toward the barn where Marcus, now the foundation's CTO, supervised installations. "Tom, look at that door." A new sign had been hung. "Safety Retrofit Station, Danny Sullivan Foundation. Protecting farm families since 2024. Sometimes timing feels merciless, but the universe has its way." Karen's weapon of vengeance had funded her son's memorial. Her attempt to destroy my farm had birthed a foundation that shielded hundreds from the risks farming had always carried. The barn doors stayed open. The cattle stayed fed. And amid the endless cycle of planting and harvest, one young man's dream of safer farms endured, through a mother who finally transformed grief into something beautiful. As the sun lowered over fields saved by tragedy turned triumph, I brushed my fingers across the retrofit plate on the barn door, a token of the line between ruin and renewal, despair and purpose, revenge and redemption. Later, I sat at my kitchen table, holding Danny's letter until darkness swallowed the horizon. His neat handwriting spoke of duty and forgiveness his mother had denied for 2 years. He knew the part was flawed, but tested it anyway, because a life was at stake. That choice cost him everything, but saved Pete's life and revealed the man he truly was, one who'd risk himself to spare another. The foundation outpaced even Marcus's boldest estimates. By year 2, Danny's systems equipped 800 farms across 12 states. The retrofit program had stopped 63 accidents, for that would have been fatal without his innovations. Insurance companies were offering discounts for Sullivan-equipped farms, and agricultural colleges were weaving his designs into their curriculum. Karen had found her calling in the last place she expected. The woman who once tormented HOA meetings with violation notices now traveled the Midwest, teaching workshops and sharing her son's story. She became a leading advocate for agricultural safety reform, pushing lawmakers to fund upgrades and enforce higher standards. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Her attempt at destruction had created something priceless. Her grief had nearly broken one farm, but her son's legacy was now protecting thousands. And that's how a $200,000 Bentley learned never to tangle with a farmer's livelihood. Karen's carefully planned revenge had collapsed spectacularly, turning her weapon into scrap metal and her malice into a monument for her son. Sometimes justice looks like a hydraulic bucket meeting German engineering. Sometimes the most shattered souls heal in ways no one could expect. Here at Echo Stories, we believe every feud has hidden layers, every villain has a past, and every ending holds a lesson about human ties. This saga of farm machinery versus luxury cars reminds us that grief can twist good people into monsters, but can also guide them back when truth is faced. If this tale of small-town justice and redemption moved you, hit that like button and tell us in the comments what you think about Karen's transformation from adversary to advocate. Goodbye for now, and join us in the next Stories episode as we uncover another tale of human struggle, small-town secrets, and the fragile connections that define us all.